we're gonna go over the difference between the first pass and the second pass. The way I do my first pass is I put a little bit of pigment on my blades. Just put pigment on the tip of the blades. You don't want to oversaturate the blade, otherwise you won't be able to see your stroke. So I drop a little bit of pigment in order to see where my stroke placement is going to be, and then I gently glide my blade. I move very slowly in order to move that pigment completely and evenly throughout the entire stroke. So the first pass is really meant to fill in all of my strokes, starting with those frame strokes, so that I don't need my brow mapping anymore. That way I can wipe it away and see all of my strokes without the pigment covering it. I put just a little bit of pigment on my blade, not a lot. I tap my blade on the skin. Once I see that pigment drop, then I move the pigment along that entire stroke so that it's evenly distributed. If you use too much pigment, you won't be able to see how close your strokes are, and your strokes will be too far apart. You won't have a really full eyebrow. So when you're doing your first pass, everything has to be done properly. That means your blade has to be hitting the skin at a 90-degree angle. You can't dip your tool from one side to the other, otherwise you're gonna get a side cut. You wanna move really slow. This isn't a race. The slower you move, the better your strokes are gonna be, because you wanna get that pigment into the skin evenly. You don't wanna get pigment retention where it's only in the beginning of the stroke and not in the tip of the stroke or the end of the stroke. So I'm building my outline, starting with my frame, those red, yellow, and orange strokes. And if you've taken my online training, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone does their first pass a little differently. They might just do their outline strokes and then come back on their second pass and fill in the rest. For me, I want to get as much of my eyebrow completed on the first pass so that the second pass is just to perfect everything. A lot of people ask me why they didn't get good pigment retention. If you're not getting that skin tight, and if you're going too deep or not deep enough, you're not gonna get good pigment retention. This shouldn't be a cut. It should be a scratch. Try to think of it more of a scratch than a cut. A cut will be too deep, and you'll have less control over your blade. The lighter the pressure, the better control of your blade, and the better and easier you can curve your blade, getting those nice curved strokes. Let's just pretend that this is all filled up with strokes. After I've done all of my strokes, I'm gonna take my lip applicator and rub all the pigment into those strokes. When you do that, make sure to hold the skin super taut. Otherwise, if you don't hold it taut, that pigment won't actually get into those cuts, and you probably will get super faded results. So now on my second pass, I come back, I numb the skin again. Now this is where it's gonna differ depending on your style. On my second pass, I'm gonna go over all my strokes without pigment. The reason why I do this is it's easier for me to see where my blade is hitting, and it's crucial that your blade is going exactly in the same stroke. If you don't get exactly in the same stroke, you're gonna create a double stroke. It's going to heal super blurry, and it's just not gonna be crisp. So that's my trick, is doing it without pigment. I'm gonna gently tap my tool onto the base or root of that hair stroke, and then softly glide my blade across that stroke. I'm not trying to get it much deeper. I'm just trying to even out the depth of that stroke. So I'm gonna go over all my strokes twice so that they're 2 times thicker and darker. In some cases, you may find that you'll need to go over a stroke 3 times to get it 2 times thicker. Once I've gone over all my strokes, I'm gonna take my lip applicator. I'm gonna hold the skin super taut, and I'm really going to get that pigment into the skin. If you don't massage that pigment into the skin thoroughly, you won't get the pigment in there. If you don't hold the skin taut, the pigment won't get in there. Once I'm doing my second pass, I may find that I can squeeze in a few more strokes. That's cool too, but remember, you're going to have to go over that stroke twice in order to get it the same size and depth as all of the other strokes. So that's the difference between my first pass and second pass when I perform my microblading procedures.
We are young, let's be